Hello, horror fans. It's me, Cassandra, and I am flying solo today. However, I have a very special interview. I am talking to Ian Nathan, who is the writer and director of Aliens Expanded. If you have not heard about Aliens Expanded is the recent documentary detailing every single thing that you ever wanted to know about aliens and includes really amazing interviews from none other than James Cameron himself, Lance Henriksen, my favorite, and so many more. It has been an absolute joy to talk to Ian, and I hope that you guys enjoy this interview. So buckle up, grab your flamethrowers, and stay away from the xenomorphs or go towards them if you think they're cute and cuddly. But either way, buckle up and let's get into this interview. Cue the music. Hello, horror fans. It's me, Cassandra from the Horrorcraft Podcast, and I am with writer and director Ian Nathan, who is the brain behind the Aliens Explained documentary that is coming out. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
We're excited to have you. As I was just saying, Aliens is one of my favorite movies. We've actually done a deep dive on this channel about aliens. We did Alien and Aliens together. But Aliens is kind of a lightning in a bottle movie. It's one of the very few examples I could say that trumps the original. Um,
It's a controversial debate that carries on, and we have it in the documentary a little bit about where do you stand on first versus the second. And I like to have them both. When it comes to these kind of debates, in the end, I'm a bit greedy, and I go, yeah, but I get to have Alien and Aliens, so why am I going to make a decision? But I know what you mean. In my
yeah,
heart, maybe it's Aliens because I saw that at the cinema and I kind of grew up with it. But I'm kind of in awe of the original too. So I have a kind of an interesting dichotomy in terms of how I approach the two films.
I feel like you can have that though, because they're two separate, even though they're connected, they're two separate feelings. Because the first one is very much this claustrophobic, like lost in space kind of feeling where everything is close quarters and it's just a ride of your life. Same kind of principle, but now we're on a whole entire planet and we
Yeah,
have so many more moving pieces and parts and we get to see the aliens a little bit more, and so it's more or less like a fight for your life, but they're both in the same kind of feeling of oh crap, this is happening kind of feeling. So
I like that. They're both in the oh crap feeling.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they're
yeah,
they're in the, it's just not a situation you I like
yeah,
it. I'm a glutton for punishment. I like,
yeah.
the fact that I feel like, oh crap, here's the xenomorphs, but that it's like I love the xenomorphs too, so that it's like a good oh crap, like yay, we get to get in, everything that these characters are going through. Let's do it. Which is a weird again dichotomy, but I love both of them. So I think that's great. And I'm excited to see the debate in there. But at this channel, we do a little bit of an icebreaker with any guest that we have on.
Cool.
I don't know if you are a horror fan or not, but obviously, Horrorcraft Podcast. Do you have a favorite horror movie?
It's a genre, I like a lot,
Hmm.
but I think, and you may agree, often it's like it's harder to find the masterpieces in horror than perhaps science fiction or film noir or some of the other ones, because it's also easier to get it wrong. I think there's probably a higher percentage of kind of crappy horror movies maybe than in other genres, but that's not to do it down. If I was to pull out a favorite, and I'm not very good at the favorites game because I pick one and then think, but hold on, there's that. Can I pick two? Can I pick two
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. Listen,
I'm cheating again. I'm really cheating.
I'm a horror podcaster, so mine changes all the time.
Right. I put my number one. I'm going to go for The Shining. It's
Okay.
Kubrick, and it just torments your memories and your nights. It's just got Nicholson's performance, but just the atmosphere and the music and the
Yes.
way that hotel seems to sort of just kind of close in on you. And the other one is also Stephen King. It's the original TV version of Salem's Lot, which is a TV miniseries, maybe more than a movie.
Oh
But
yeah.
in terms of growing up, and the thing that completely scared the bejesus out of me It was that series with David Soul and James Mason and the kind of Nosferatu looking version of the vampire they did. And the kids scratching at the window. And
Yeah, the window
honestly, I'm still
scene.
scared now.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah, the window scene is not
oh,
for the
yeah.
weak. It's definitely
Yeah.
not. Those are great ones. I like The Shining. I feel like I like Doctor Sleep a lot better, but I also feel like Doctor Sleep, the reason I like it better
Yeah.
is it marries The Shining with Stephen King's version of The Shining as well. It kind of
I
perfectly
get what you're
marries
saying. Yeah.
those two together and heightens it in such a different way. And it's just scary. Like nothing is off limits with Doctor Sleep. Kids are dying. Like
Yeah.
it's creepy. It is
Yeah.
something that just torments you on every level. It takes everything that you liked about The Shining and it just makes it just creepier. And I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less from Mike Flanagan because Mike Flanagan
Yeah.
does a lot.
He's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, so but I definitely agree. So on to aliens.
Okay.
Alien, the Xenomorph, or Predator.
I would have to go with the Xenomorph. Again, I saw Predator when I was probably 16 or
Mm-hmm.
17, and just a great night out with your mates, and quoting lines all the way home. And I loved Arnie of that era, and it was a great monster movie. And
Mm-hmm.
find a creature who can match Arnie. That really worked. And of course, the story is with Stan Winston when he designed or redesigned the Predator for the
Mm-hmm.
movie. The mandibles idea, James
Yeah.
Cameron's came from James
Yes.
Cameron. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a legacy in that. But I go for the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph is iconic, and it's
Mm-hmm.
iconic in ways that it's hard to express. Again, it's something we do get into in the documentary about, the sexuality inherent in the horror there, that the kind of, I suppose, Freudian primal readings of that creature are really, really powerful. And I think one of the great things that Aliens does is it doesn't tamper with that. It just sort of enhances it. I mean, it kind of solves the biology, but it sort of says, this is a great creature. Let's just go for it. And it stays with you. And that's one of the powers of the sequel, I think, is that we're already invested in that creature and that
Yes.
xenomorph. And we're already we're ahead of the Marines in a sense. We know
Mm-hmm.
what's waiting for them on the planet. So we've got that kind of tension because you never forget that creature. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't want to know what it is
No,
about it.
you don't.
It stays in your memories.
No, you don't. And it's just for me, I grew up like I obviously grew up too late to see Aliens in the theaters. I remember it got like re-released in my teens, but in my teens, Alien versus Predator came out.
Yeah,
And the second one came out. And I remember being so excited about that coming out because the fact of like Alien going toe to toe with Predator, which is kind of like the companion to
yeah,
Alien, like who again, you said Arnold, in the same sense, who could go up against the Xenomorph? The only one you could think of would be Predator, and it was very interesting too. And I'm a huge Lance Hendrickson fan, so when he
yeah.
came back for the first one, Alien versus Predator, part of me just like rejoiced inside. I just love him. So I thought it was just an interesting way, but I would go Xenomorph all the way. I don't know what it is. I find him huggable and lovable. Like I see stuffed animals of the Xenomorph and I'm like, that works because it's a
Well, there
creepy.
is, yeah, there is that sense, and Cameron again talks a bit about this, that the creature's not evil.
Yeah.
It's not a monster, and as far as he's concerned, it's just running by instinct. This is how it survives. This is how it reproduces, and there is an element, a little tinge of sympathy. When Ripley burns all the eggs at the end of Aliens, and the
Mm-hmm.
creature, the queen, is screaming almost in sort of anguish. That you
Yeah.
do feel a bit like that's not fair. This creature's not done anything wrong. You didn't have to go back there. And so I think it's interesting. He calls the creature pure and very Cameron-like description of it.
Yes.
But I like that in the sense that I think he's the only one in all the films that included the Xenomorph that's given us a touch of sympathy for it. Maybe the end of Alien a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
there is that kind of slightly haunting element to Aliens.
There really is. There's kind of a dichotomy throughout all of them where you kind of realize, and especially in this one with Burke, where Burke kind
Yeah,
of plays the nice guy for a lot of the movie and ends up being the worst one out of
Yeah,
all of it towards the end. And you kind of get that way with different ones, like Alien Resurrection. It's, the military and it's the way of unchecked power and stuff like that.
yeah,
Aliens 3, same way. It's the corporation trying to come after Ripley. But you do, in a way, like the aliens are bad, but they're not the worst. It's the way that people want to
yeah,
use the aliens against other people that I think is the bad, kind of the core of each movie. Is it's people that can be the worst
yeah,
monsters sometimes, and it's aliens are kind of a weapon. Like the xenomorph is kind of a weapon, and it's the way that people want to
yeah,
use it that I think freaks people out throughout the
yeah.
series. So
Yeah,
it's
it's about corruption
yeah.
and it's very anti-corporate. That was there in the first film, The Company.
Hmm.
And then Cameron, who was a child of the 60s and it was something of an anti-authoritarian, but it still is something of an anti-authoritarian. He loved that. He latched onto that and said, yeah, of course it's The Company is the villain. I think Burke is interesting because Burke, to me, is also a little bit misunderstood. Paul Reiser
Hmm.
says this. He's misunderstood. He's just going out there and doing what he thinks is right. He's doing the thing, and then ends up getting sort of caught up in his own plans and his own corruption. But he wasn't like a mastermind of evil. He's just sort of
Mm-mm.
a rather sad opportunist where his opportunity kind of doubles back on him, and
Yeah,
he's a rather
company
tragic
man.
figure, really.
Yeah, a company man that kind of wants to do what's
Yeah,
best for the company that he's trying to build up and gets really just caught in it and ends up
yeah.
in the worst way possible. Um, Obviously everyone latches on to Ripley in Aliens. Ripley is the character, the quintessential character. But if you had to choose a favorite character in Aliens besides Ripley, who would it be?
I see, this is tough. And again, I've been through this film a lot.
Yeah.
You understand lately, and I've got to know some of the Marine actors very well, which has sort of brought a different vision. I mean, I love Cynthia Scott. It was a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful interview, and she's Dietrich, and Dietrich doesn't do an awful lot in the film, but
Mm-hmm.
she's so great in the documentary that I have a little passion for Dietrich. But if you were putting, me as a 16-year-old boy who went to see the film with my dad, then I love Hicks. Hicks was so cool. Hudson's funny and Hudson is adorable, and of course we all quote Hudson, and Bill Paxton is immortal. But for me, it's Michael Biehn as Hicks. He's just the one I wanted to be. He just has that restraint. He's like a character from a sort of 70s Western, ice cold and cool, but it's got a heart. And I love his flirtation with Ripley that gives
Mm-hmm.
her something more, gives her a kind of womanliness that's really kind of effective. And he does it. And if you look at the film, there's not huge amounts of Hicks in it, but he's so memorable in what Michael Biehn does. You just catch that character and you just get to know him and you root for him. You're really behind Hicks. You want to be beside him. So I just think Hicks is great.
Yeah, I love Hicks. I love Bishop. I don't know what it is.
You're a Lance Henriksen girl.
I'm a Lance Hendrickson girl. I love Lance Hendrickson. I think he is so underrated as an actor. I mean, this is my first film watching him, but then I saw Pumpkinhead after this, and I
Yeah,
think he gives such an incredible underrated performance in Pumpkinhead because that's such a crazy role playing a dad who like wants vengeance but then gets
yeah.
caught up in his vengeance and like it really battles with his own morality. And in this, I feel like there was a lot to prove with his character because very like realistically, Ripley is scarred from
Yeah,
having to deal with the android from the first movie. And so for the first half of the movie, we're like, okay, is he bad? Is he not bad? And
yeah,
then we
yeah.
kind of fall in love with him in a way. You see Ripley go on to kind of trust him and really latch on to him. But I just think he brings just such a humanity in the second part of Aliens, like with just
Or is
latching
it
on.
a bigger disguise still?
Oh yeah.
Can we ever? I mean, Lance was wonderful. He's 82 now,
Yeah.
and it's still just kind of Lance Henriksen and a little eccentric, and I think enjoys being a little eccentric
Hmm.
in his views. But he was really good on how he interpreted the character. He said he was a 12-year-old orphan. He was a 12-year-old boy. That's how he played him, an innocent who just wants respect and just wants his peers or his betters really to approve of him. And that's how he played him. And he said, I thought of him as good. I never at any point had any other kind of way of doing it. Well, he might have been fooling a little bit with me, but he just said, you've got to play Bishop as an innocent, a child. He's as much a child as Newt in the film.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at him, I say strange child, but
Yeah,
he's got a kind of, I think, an angelic quality almost
he does.
that
He
I think
does.
Michael Fassbender sort of looked at and used when he came to interpret the idea of
Yes.
the synthetic life. But yeah, I'm with you. I think, and again, there's not huge amounts of Bishop in the film. If you look at
No,
it,
there's not. There's not.
there's massive impact. As soon as he's a synthetic straight away, and that's said. So it's the opposite of Ash in the original.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, every time he reappears, he just gives the film something new and interesting. Oh God, yeah, him. Oh God, can I trust him? I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
trust him. I really do.
Yeah, it's just there's something about him. And it is with a lot of the characters from the film because a lot of them don't have a lot of screen time, but it's the way that all of them kind of fit in this puzzle together that just make it such a beautiful portrait. So it's hard kind of to point out certain ones, but I feel like with certain characters, it's just like kind of bringing all of that together. It wouldn't work without certain parts and certain actors, I think.
Oh yeah, and
Um,
Cameron is so good at that. I think if you say all his films, he's
mm,
brilliant at characterization on the run. He
mhm.
doesn't need a lot of time. There's not bags of exposition. There's not stop and give a life story stuff. He's got the tension going and the plot going and the action going. Yet he's giving you character the whole way along. Everything is about emphasizing character. And we know those Marines within what, 3 scenes? We
Yes.
already know them and we're with them and we go, oh, I know Hudson, I know Hicks, I know
Yeah.
Frost. And you're just there alongside them. And you're like, I'm starting to be very affectionate toward them and then to feel a lot for them. And Cameron is just brilliant at that. People should look at his screenplays. You want to learn and go, that's how you develop character. You don't slow it down. You don't need to. You just show how characters operate and then they come alive.
Yeah, no, they really do. And I think that's what a lot of people, I think, don't think about Aliens and the Alien franchise about being a horror movie. They think it lands more in sci-fi, but it's both. And I think the
Yeah.
real horror behind that, especially with Aliens, is we do get invested with those characters. So when they go down,
Yeah.
we feel that throughout the whole entire movie. There is not a scene where somebody isn't getting expended that we're like, oh my gosh, like we're in there with it. We feel that fear, that anxiety of who are we going to lose
Yeah.
next? How are we going to get out of this? And that's what makes a good horror movie, is that element of we're buying into the characters in that movie and then
Yeah.
really it paying out in such horrible, horrific ways, and trying to hold on to as many of those characters as we can by the end. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's impossible. Horror movies can end good or bad. Um, but we really do invest. So I think that's what he does really well. Cameron does really well in Aliens, is we're invested in all of them. And it's just
Yeah.
we feel this horrible sense of dread at the end, that even though we've made it out, we know we're not fully making it out,
Yeah.
and we're not making it out with a lot of the people we liked.
Yeah,
There are
it's
Go ahead.
painful. It's about loss, that
Yeah.
film. And that's so brilliant is that you don't really, you've not met these characters long, but as soon as they start going from Frost onwards, and you're going, where's he gone? He's gone. I wanted to see more of him. I want to be with him. And that kind of heartbeat that he gives the film is intense. And that's just to the credit of Cameron as a filmmaker. I think that you're just alongside those characters. And for the single point that he always makes is that I want you to feel the pain when they go. I want you to be in that place because once you're there, you're all the way up to Ripley, you're just feeling it and feeling it and feeling it.
Really, you really are. There are some iconic lines in this movie, absolutely iconic. I mean, just full spectrum of just lines, from the very dramatic and powerful, like "get away from her, you bitch," to like some of the funnier ones. What is your favorite line in Aliens?
Oh, my favorite line. Yeah, for different reasons, different things. I mean, Get Away From Me, Bitch is so extraordinary because it's a moment and it's a cathartic moment. And it's really the first time the film is slightly aware of itself. It's the only moment in the whole film where it's slightly ironic because it makes you aware of that line, but she delivers it, you know.
Oh
Again, you
yeah.
come back to things, we all go, oh, you want to cheer. Just go back and look at it for her performance, and you go, oh, that's landing it. Um, but if I would say my favorite line, and it really sort of relates to a moment, and every time I go back to the film, it's a heartbreaking moment when Gorman goes back for Vasquez, and they're in
Mm,
the kind of confines of the kind of the air ducts, and she's acid on her foot, and it's all over, and she just goes, "You really were an asshole, Gorman," and then she hits the grenade, and it's a lovely sort of conclusion to both their stories. It's his redemption
yes.
and her death, and everybody loves Vasquez. You've been with her. She's such a great character that I love the way that Cameron can sign off things with just one line, and brilliant screenwriting again,
Yes.
but just a really moving moment. And of course you love all Hudson stuff. Yeah, that's the relief in the film. Game over, man.
Yeah.
That's the chance you get to breathe, and so that's all fantastic. But yeah, I just love that little moment where those two characters, she sort of forgives him, and
Yes.
that's the end of them. And it's just a lasting thing.
Yeah, my favorite line has to do with Vasquez as well. And I love when Hudson's like, "Hey, Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man?" And she quips back, "Have you?" And I think that's just such a telling like point in her character. Like you just know that
Yeah,
like she cares about everyone that's there, but she is that person. She is that
yeah,
woman.
she's
She
taking
takes
no
no.
crap. Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna take no shit.
Amazingly, yeah, that line Cameron said came from real life. He was in a bar, and he saw a girl at the bar put down a guy right beside him with exactly that phrase. They're even saying, "Man, no, of you," and he's writing it on a napkin. He said, "I know I'm going to use that one day." And he said, "You absorb from life. You're a great writer. You sit there and you listen and you take it in." So somewhere out there is someone who originally said that line, and it's been used, immortalized within Aliens.
If you are that person and you are listening to this episode, please drop your information. Like, please let us know that you are that person because we would really like to know.
You'll be
Um,
somewhere probably around like 1981, 82,
yeah,
83, somewhere around there.
somebody probably like that person probably ended up did seeing aliens and was like, "Hey, hey,
Ah,
hey,
I,
hey."
I know that line.
Hey. Um, so last of all, obviously Aliens is an incredible sci-fi. It's the top tier, what we think about with science fiction films. But if you could recommend one more science fiction film to somebody who liked Aliens, it's kind of in the vein of Aliens, what would be your recommendation?
This is hard. This is hard. Such a big. Are we're kind of expecting people to have seen a lot, I suppose. Um,
I mean, it could be
I would
anybody.
always, I would recommend Blade Runner to anyone.
Hmm.
I would, even if you're not into, science fiction, it's just a wonderful piece of filmmaking. Same year, The Thing, I would recommend a double bill of The Thing and Blade Runner. Sort of
Oh,
throw those things together, and you kind of get Alien and Aliens, in a kind of
hmm.
Venn diagram way. So I'd always recommend those. Um, I would also kind of sort of suggest, be a bit sort of film schooly, that a lot of this stuff sort of goes back to the silent era and German expressionist films like the
Hmm.
Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Metropolis. And although obviously they are silent films, and you have to sort of adjust your brain to that, and they're
Right.
a slightly more academic experience maybe than something like Aliens, I would recommend, you've got a free Sunday afternoon, and they're not hugely long films, trying out that and just seeing where all this came from. And already the camera, the lighting, and the moods were born in the 90s. And you think it was in Berlin and the Nazis were on
Yeah.
the rise. So all those kind of things are leaning in. So there's this wonderful sense of history getting imbued into the genre right at its beginning that I think is echoed right down the line in Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
They're films full of the idea that cinema isn't, and science fiction and horror aren't divorced from reality. They absorb it and reinterpret it. And I think those legacies are what makes, why we return to the franchise, and certainly the two masterpieces at its beginning, Alien and Aliens. I think that they're in Giger's art as well, the legacies of
Yeah.
Europe and conflict and the Holocaust. I don't get too dramatic, but all those things are sort of sucked into it. And we want to know why the films stick with us. I think it's haunted by history, in a sense.
Yeah, no, I really like those answers because I always go in a different direction, which is crazy. But I think anybody who likes this film, it's not necessarily I guess you could consider it science fiction, but it's not a mistake that there are a ton of the same actors from this film and the film I'm about to say, but Near
You know where you're
Dark
going? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Near Dark kind of
Good
has the
choice. Yeah,
same feeling. And
yeah,
it's kind of some of the core people with Lance Hendrickson and Cynthia and just amazing fucking people. Like you're just
yeah,
invested in that movie. But then Leviathan is another one for me. And I feel like it takes the best parts of Alien and Aliens with like the claustrophobia and then the sense of
yeah.
the creatures. And I mean, you have RoboCop in that movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Great movie.
RoboCop
Great
taking
movie.
on, deep sea creatures, and I think it just works. But no, I think those are great. And Near Dark, I mean, like Bill Paxton
Yeah.
as Hudson
Being
in this
evil.
movie is
Evil.
iconic.
Yeah.
But in Near Dark, that is what I picture Bill Paxton, like his just monologue in the middle of the bar
Yeah,
with
yeah.
like as a dirty cowboy with the spurs and everything. Like that to me is peak Bill Paxton and stays within my mind forever. Like I there are times where I literally will just like I'll be in the middle of doing nothing and it'll just be like, oh yeah, that exists in my brain. um Truly,
Of
because I
course,
just
Catherine, again, the link goes back to Cameron because he was
yeah.
married to Catherine Bigelow, who directed Near
Yes.
Dark, and she was around, subsequently of that at that time.
Right.
And it amazes me that she was never offered an Alien film. Maybe she was. Maybe the legacy of being married to James Cameron put her off. But she would have been such a good choice to make an Alien movie.
Oh, she would have. I mean,
Yeah.
she really would have. I maybe one day that could happen. I would be really excited to see them
Yeah,
follow up
to
with
let
that.
her loose on it and to let her do what
Yeah,
she wants, and it would be really cool.
because I feel like that's kind of what she got with Near Dark, because she always wanted to do a Western. And
Yeah,
so her mind was like, okay, I'm going to do a vampire Western. And like at face value, that shouldn't work, right? Like that should not
yeah,
work, but it works on so many different levels and just the humanity that's behind it. You get that same
yeah,
kind of feeling you get with that. And I think it just kind of goes to testament about how powerful both Cameron and Catherine Bigelow are as directors and writers, and just the brains that they have behind such beautiful characters. So I think it just works. But yeah, I love Near Dark. Near Dark is criminally underrated, and I feel like people
yeah,
should know about it more. So thank you for playing the icebreakers with me. I
that's
appreciate
all right.
it. um, so now to get into Aliens Explained. So can you
Sorry,
tell
it's
me
Aliens Expanded is our title.
expanded? Sorry,
Yeah,
expanded. Thank
just
you
in
for
case just
correcting me.
those who are going to search it out on Google, I better get it right.
Aliens Expanded.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, how did this documentary come together?
Without giving you my entire life story, which is a long story, um, I was, I was a editor of a film magazine. I'd written books. I wrote a book called Alien Vault,
Hmm.
which was very popular about the making of the first film, Ridley Scott's film. And I'd gone on as a talking head, a documentary called In Search of Tomorrow,
Hmm.
made by this fantastic team who made In Search of Darkness, the series of In
Yes.
Search of Darkness films. A guy called Robin Block and David Weiner are the guys who were involved in
David
that.
Weiner has been on here before. We
Yeah.
talked about In Search of Darkness, the '90s, but yeah, I mean they're iconic.
Yeah, great guys. And so I've done some good talking. I've been interviewed by David Weiner for 3 hours on In Search of Tomorrow, mainly talking about Cameron movies. So we talked a lot about Aliens, about The Abyss, and Terminator.
Hmm.
And Robin sort of stayed in touch with me, the producer Robin, and he sort of dropped hints and said, "If you ever wanted to make a documentary, what were you thinking of?" And fun enough, we talked a little bit about Stephen King at one point. I said, I'm interested in, could you do the Stephen King adaptations and do like In Search of Darkness, as do Stephen King? But I think it was a French documentary was doing something like that at the time. And so period went past, and he invited me to lunch and just said, "I've had this idea about, instead of doing an era, doing one film that sort of sums up an era in a sense. So instead of the macroscopic, do the microscopic, the autopsy." And almost like simultaneously, because I said, "Well, what film are you thinking of?" And it was almost like we said it in unison: Aliens and Aliens. And we both instantly understood why you would choose Aliens and rather than Alien, because it's the passion and the fandom. And as great as the original film is, and don't get me wrong, I'd love to do a documentary on the original film, but Aliens gave you this heartbeat, and it gave you this all the stuff we already talked about, all the stuff about the love of the characters, the
Hmm.
kind of devotion, the way it's a friend, this film, it's a comfort, even though it's really frightening. It's a
Yeah.
comfort food, and you just return to it. If it's on the television late at night, you accidentally come across it, you always stay to the end. You can't help yourself. And that was key, because I was very conscious in stepping into directing it that, you know, it's a 37-year-old film. There's some really good documentaries already made for it. Superior Firepower is terrific. And there's this incredible fan community that surrounds particularly Aliens that know a lot and have studied the film a lot. And I was a bit like, well, what can I say that's going to expand on this incredible knowledge and passion that's already out there? And it kind of dawned on me that that's the point. The incredible passion that's out there is the point, is the theme of the documentary. That's what you go in with, and that's what you explore, and that's what you expand upon. And through that idea, you then can do your making of bits, and you can do your stories from set, and you can do your thematic analysis, and you do your funny stuff, and you can do your sort of extra genre things where you go out from Aliens and explore the influence and the things that came in, and you explore Cameron's career. All of that can be done through the prism of, why is it we love this film so much? That's, if you say, what's your documentary about? That is the one question I've asked above all. Why is it we love it? Why is it you tell me it's your comfort food? What is it within it that, makes us, joyful in a strange way, as much as we're terrified and excited
Right.
and thrilled and all those kind of great emotions? It's a film that gives people great joy, and I just wanted to know why. And that's 4 hours later, a whole documentary, 30 something interviews later. I may not have answered it fully, and that's not the point. I've just gone on that journey and that exploration, and had a lot of different answers.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think we kind of talked about this before, but I know we talked about the characters and why people gravitate towards them, but why do you think people gravitate more towards Aliens than maybe say the first one? I mean, we all love and respect the first one, but why do you think that there maybe is this more reverence for the second one, that people just kind of grip onto?
I think Why Aliens is probably the more adored film. Yeah, I think you hold Alien in sort of a bit of awe and respect, and it's a wonderful piece of filmmaking. If you just look at the first film, an extraordinary piece of sort of adaptation of genre, of fusing horror and sci-fi together. But there is a kind of emotional current in Aliens that is undeniable and unrefusable, that it just involves you from the off. And that's really for a lot of reasons. But I think Cameron was clear, and this is such an important decision, that it had to continue the story of Ripley. I think Fox would have been open to any other ideas, because she was going to be expensive, Sigourney Weaver. So I think they were like,
Yeah.
well, can we do something different? Can we just start again? And he was insistent it had to be Ripley's story. But you see Ripley in a different place. She's not the same character. And I think opening that up and going on a journey with her, and it is her journey. In fact, most of the scenes are at the service of her character. What I mean by that is like you do something like the hive sequence in which is the middle of the film where it all goes wrong, and it's all about aliens dropping on the Marines and chaos, and it's done on cameras and it's done in glimpses and it's done from the APC. Wonderful piece of sort of three-dimensional chess, if you will. All of that is to remind you of Ripley and to bring Ripley out as the leader. It's all to that one direction, which again, brilliant screenwriting and brilliant emotional creation within the film. And I think he does that, Cameron, across the board with so much of the film that what's in the first film is kind of tough people at the end of their tether trying to survive. And that's very powerful and very realistic. You don't really like those people very much, but you're with them because of the brute horror of what confronts them. Whereas with aliens, you're allowed to like them earlier on, and you like them and you go with them. And even Gorman and Burke, you have a kind of feeling for, even though they're inept or dubious, you kind of want to like them. And it's a great Cameron quality, I think, that he wants you to like his characters as much as he does. And you can feel his kind of pleasure in creating them. And a lot of that by instinct. But I think that kind of fundamental difference with Alien is that it's a more welcoming film. It invites you in and then puts you through hell, but it invites you in and to be alongside them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like Alien, it's such a great film, but it's kind of almost ethereal in the way that it's this very you aren't as grounded in the characters, just kind of like what you were saying. You aren't as invested. You're more invested in the horror, maybe in the first film, and the shock and the value of being stuck in this situation. I feel like with Cameron in the second one, it's almost this homegrown feeling of horror. Like it's dropping these, instead of making the aliens the showpiece, which I mean they are, it's more or less the characters. And I think that serves the second film so much better because you're so much more invested. So by the time things happen in the film, you're just, in the first film you're waiting to see the alien, you're waiting to see the horror, you're there with
Yeah.
them, the chest bursting scene. You're more invested in the alien and the situation and being lost in space and being confined with this character, where the second one, you're like, you're just kind of, oh my gosh, like these people are, ahead of the time, like you've already seen the first movie,
Yeah.
that they're about to get dropped into something horrific, and he makes you invest in those characters in such a profound way that by the time all of it's just unfolding, because once it starts, it's just like hit after hit after hit,
Yeah.
and it just keeps going. And so it makes the characters more of a showpiece in the second one. Because, I mean, we do get more screen time with the xenomorph in the second film. Because in the first film, I think it
Yeah.
was maybe like 12, 15 minutes that we actually got to see like the xenomorph, like bits and pieces of it. Where in this one, we're seeing tons of them. We see the hive,
Yeah.
we see the way that they're, but the characters are what we invest in first. So by the time we get to those parts, we already kind of have like a oh shit factor in there with them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we're
Yeah.
watching in horror as all of this is unfolding as well. And for Ripley, I think it is a smart choice because in the first one, she only dealt with a xenomorph. She's dealt with not something on this scale. So then to have this all unfurl with the face huggers, the sheer amount of xenomorphs and different things, we're already like, oh shit, she's already been through this once, and now she has to go through a whole fucking hive of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're all just kind of horrified. So I do think that that was a great choice. Cameron is known for strong women characters throughout his movies. That's just kind of his bread and butter. What do you think it is about Ripley that puts her kind of a tier above a lot of the characters that he does?
I think, and again, something thematically it's discussed in the documentary about, what is it about Ripley and what is it about the film, what is it about Cameron that
Mm-hmm.
he brings this out. Um, I think that obviously there was the element of who she was in the first film. And one of the cleverest things that were done, and I'm not sure entirely like motivated by some great sort of feminist impulse. I
Mm-hmm.
think certainly from Ridley Scott's point of view, it was just, I like that. That's a twist. People won't expect that. But originally it was a male lead,
Mm-hmm.
and somewhere along the development process before they were shooting, Alan Ladd Jr., the head of Fox, claims credit for it, that he said, why don't you switch them over? Why don't you have a female lead? He liked The Birds with Hitchcock, and he liked Tippi Hedren in
Yes.
that he wanted that kind of feeling. And Scott went, that's great. That works, because you're going to think she's going to die. She's she's the cute one. She's the one everyone likes. She'll die before the end, but we'll twist that. And I think that was the motivation. But what comes from maybe a simplistic choice through Sigourney Weaver's performance and through the way the film is executed is this implicit idea of the strength of her as a character, and the fact that you don't think about it. You don't sit there going, it's a woman doing this. You just go, it's Ripley. That's what you do. And I think Cameron gets that. And I think he gets that instinctually, because all his films kind of do that. Sarah Connor's journey is to
Yes.
Ripley. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, I think, is wonderful in The Abyss. She's
Mm-hmm.
kind of Ripley. And I think there's a lot of, and Cameron admits this, Cameron's mother in these characters, and he puts it into Ripley, because his mother was impressive. She had enrolled in the Canadian Territorial Army. I mean, she dressed in fatigues and went yomping at weekends, and she could take a rifle to pieces and put it back together. She could deal with stuff. And he tells a story in a documentary about how he hobbled in as a kid with a nail stuck into his foot one afternoon, and she just grabs the kind of bit of wood with the nail and pulls it out without blinking. And he says, I realized my mum could deal with shit, and I thought, you've inherited that from your mum, and you've put her into your films with lots of other things. And let's never discount Sigourney Weaver in this. She owned that character and was invested in that character. And what for me is the great strength of how Aliens goes about it is, it never qualifies that. It never stops to tell us, look how feminist we're being. It just goes, look how good a character this is. Look how she is the natural leader. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with her gender. It has to do with who she is. It has to do with the fact she's Ripley. And that's true of Vasquez. That's true of Newt. Newt, a little girl, but she survived on this planet, and she's got a lot more to her than some of these soldiers around her. So it's there, and it's in the film, and it's very, very powerful. But what makes it work, I think, and against things that I think other screenwriters and direct filmmakers should learn, is that the story will do it. You don't need to explain yourself. The story will do it. And the very fact we're talking now about a film 37 years old and going, look how powerful it is, means the story did it. And look, the army now have women in the infantry, and they didn't in 1985 when that film was made. And now when we look at Vasquez, and not for one moment do we go, why is she in the army? Why is she a
Yeah.
soldier? We just go, whoa, she is good. She's got it. And that's how Cameron worked. He loved characters. But it's there. It is feminist. It is a theme in the film. Gail Ann Hurd was the producer, really strong woman and a really powerful presence in terms of the creation of the film. All the actresses, from Sigourney Weaver, Jeanette Goldstein, all the way through the film,
Yeah.
they're really strong presence, and they're not taking any crap, within the film and within the making of the film. So it is, but I think if you come back to Cameron, I think his mother is a big influence, and I think he likes women. And I don't just mean kind of sexually. I think he likes
No,
women
I think
as
he just likes,
characters.
yeah,
Yeah,
he just likes strong characters. And I think that's
yeah,
what we gravitate towards, because, we've done an episode where we talked about aliens, and on our podcast, um, it's women. It's the three of us and our
yeah,
friend Zane, who is a trans woman. And you gravitate towards those characters for a reason, because everything that you just described in horror films, it is more of a genre that you do have a lot more women,
Yeah.
but it's hard to stand out in that because a lot of times either women are cannon fodder or it's this idea that we have to go through this horrible traumatic thing to come out as this badass, like we earn the right to do this. And in Aliens specifically, with every woman that's in there, that's never an issue. It's
Yeah.
automatically like everyone around them is like, you don't have to prove anything to us. You're just here.
Yeah.
Like we never question, they're never questioned on why they have to have a space, why they have to have a seat doing those things. It's just inherently accepted, and it gives this beautiful room to just be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're going to stand up and be a badass, okay, let's go ahead and do that. Like it's really refreshing, and it's kind of interesting because we did do an episode about badass women in horror, and the two that were picked were Linda Hamilton. I'm tripping over my words with that. Linda Hamilton and Sigourney Weaver, both
Yeah. Yeah.
for being Ripley and Sarah Connor, and it for the same reasons. Is it's just you
And
never
they're
doubt them.
such dimensional characters as well. They're both mothers,
Yes.
and they're kind of really exciting people, mothers, incredibly strong and brave and great leaders, yet women and beautiful and feminine. They get to be all these things because they're human beings. And Cameron just sort of knows that and does that. I don't think he could describe why. I don't think, you ask him, he just goes, well, that made sense. He talks about his mother, but he doesn't, they just make sense to him. And, he's always had incredibly strong women around him. We talked about Catherine Bigelow, Gail
Yeah.
Ann Hurd, Linda Hamilton, remarkable, Susie Amis, amazing, women around him. And I think he likes that, and he makes sense to him. And it's a very powerful theme in his films, and a very powerful theme in Alien films, but without the burden of baggage. It
Yeah.
just naturally happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the idea with motherhood because I feel like I am a mother, and we have two other co-hosts that are mothers as well, a
Yeah.
stepmother and a mother. And for us, I think the big idea is motherhood never takes away anything from who these characters are. It never once tarnishes who they are. It never once is this kind of plot
Oh yeah.
device. It's just this natural, organic part of their character, and it never takes away from them being a badass
Oh
or what
hey
they have
hey.
to do.
Yeah. If you come to Aliens, and Cameron says, the toughest thing in the universe is a mother protecting her young.
Mm-hmm.
He says that's the thing that occurred to him very beginning. He says, what could be the strongest impulse, the strongest instinct? It's an angry mother. It's a mother
Yeah.
bear. And he says, once you've got that, then that's what Ripley becomes. And of course, that's the Queen as well. The Queen is angry and protecting her young, and so
She
it's
really is.
yeah, it's an incredibly powerful idea about motherhood is about force and power and
Yes.
strength and anger and all those things. We're talking about the great line, "Get away from her, you bitch." That's mothers. That's not idiot men getting it all wrong. It's not idiot men just shooting at each other. It's two mothers, and these are primal forces. I am going to save my young. And you've never had that in science fiction. We've never had that, particularly in horror. It was it's a revolutionary idea.
Yeah, no, it really was. And I think that's why so many women too gravitate towards not only Cameron's films, but the Alien franchise because
Yeah.
it's such these deep ingrained ideas, and nothing ever takes away from who those characters are,
Yeah.
which I think is fantastic. So you're a big super fan, obviously, of the Aliens films and aliens in general. What was important for you to get right about this documentary?
Um, as I said, my great fear going in was I was sort of telling everybody what they already knew, that I would just kind of like repeat the same old
Right.
things. And to some extent, you have to make your peace with that, because this film is 37 years old, and you wouldn't tackle a film on this level unless it was very popular. So
Right.
you have to kind of make your peace that a lot of people love this film. That's why they're going to want to watch your documentary. So on one level, you have to go, okay, I will explore the familiar things, but hopefully I will explore them with a new voice and a new passion, and we'll tell stories that you may know, but we'll tell them in different ways, or we'll tell them in ways that just make you feel happy again, just remind you why you love something, and that's
Yeah.
great. Like we've just been chatting, you just want to be reminded of those things, and you know them, but it's great to talk about them. So that was very much in my mind, and I had to, once I made my peace with that, I was a lot happier. And then alongside that journey, you can start unearthing things and looking at things in a different way. And as I said, it's a documentary about aliens from the perspective of now, looking back. If you haven't seen Aliens, it's really going to spoil it for you. So see Aliens first, watch the documentary, then watch Aliens again.
Yeah.
It's for fans and it's made by fans. And I think that was great because then once you're talking to the cast and crew about on that level, you can, and I explained all this to them and I said, look, this is where we're coming from. They were kind of liberated by that, I think, and then they can start talking about, oh yeah, and this was happening, and we go over some of the controversies, the trouble Cameron had with the British crew, the kind of difficulties that it was to get that film over the line. All those alien films are really hard to make. They're just really hard to make. And a lot of that battle ends up in the film, I think, in the spirit of the film, that the tension on set
Hmm.
gets imbued, and we explore that. But in the end, I suppose the biggest sort of burden was I just wanted it to be good. It sounds like really obvious. I love aliens, and I just wanted a film that people would make the backers and make the fans happy. And they would come to me and go, that was great. I had a great experience, reminded why I love aliens. And I didn't know all those things about aliens. And hearing all those different voices again and seeing those faces again, you know, Cameron is just really funny. He's an older guy looking back on it being young and maybe being a bit foolish when he was younger, a bit less diplomatic than he could have been. But he's wonderfully funny and sort of open. And it really enriches the documentary to have got him and to hear him so relaxed and charming and funny about the creation of it, that suddenly it had a new tone. It had this not comical, but comic element to it
Yeah.
that lightened it up in a way that I was so delighted by. And I thought, I don't want to be dry and boring, and I hope that's the one thing I'm not is boring.
I don't think I've seen the trailer, and
Yeah.
we will link the trailer in the description down below,
Thank you.
along where you can pre-order if Aliens Expanded. But I feel like that really does come across, and for me, I love that. I love being able to be in the film. Um, I love the feeling of that, the behind the scenes. I feel as horror fans, especially, we love that aspect of like being in that journey. I remember when In Search of Darkness came out, all three parts of the 80s, and I specifically remember the last two hitting Shudder um during COVID. I remember watching those, like
Yeah,
them playing in
yeah.
the background while I was like going about doing laundry, different things like that. And I remember specifically having a notepad and stopping and writing certain movies that I knew I hadn't seen that I wanted to watch. Um, but it's that feeling of feeling like I belong in this. Like I'm a fan, I belong in this too. And I think that's what really does come across when you watch the trailer. So I'm very excited to see it. And I know everyone listening probably will be too, because Aliens is so iconic. The last thing I want to talk about, because
Yeah.
obviously you're an Aliens fan, is how do you feel about Aliens getting expanded now for the new generation with the new film that's coming out by Fev Alvarez and the TV show that's going to be coming out?
Yeah. It's a great moment, isn't it, in terms of the life cycle of aliens, if
Yes.
you want. And I think, like a lot of fans, I got a bit disillusioned. I love Ridley, and I will go into bat for Alien and Blade Runner, and I love 1492, and I love many of his films. And so I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. But I became a bit disheartened after Prometheus and Alien Covenant that
Yeah.
they were answering questions I hadn't asked, and they were kind of making the mythology pragmatic in a way I didn't like.
Yeah.
and I just didn't find them particularly scary. I found them slightly
No.
confusing. So I've become dispirited, and what I'm really hoping is that we've kind of going back to basics, and the joy of the first two Alien films, to some extent Alien 3 as well, elements of it, and bits of Alien Resurrection, is that you put the horror front and center and the action front and center, and the mythology sort of goes on in the background,
Mm-hmm.
yet it's very powerful and very present. You know, the bit where they go onto the derelict for the first time in Alien and they see the space jockey. I don't
Yeah.
want to know what that is because my
No.
brain, my imagination is doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great a phrase from Stephen King that he says the ultimate thing you can attain as a horror writer or director is terror. Terror is the goal, and terror
Mm-hmm.
is the knock at the door. And he says, as soon as you open the door, that's horror, you know, because you're showing them something or you're
Yeah.
describing it. But until you open that door, the reader or the watcher's imagination is going like crazy. And he said, you can never match that. You can never beat the imagination of your reader or the watcher. And there are elements of Alien and Aliens that do that. You know, although we see a lot, there's room for our imagination in them. And I think all subsequent films, and maybe it's because of special effects and the flexibility of that, you lose a little bit.
Yeah,
And
you
I'm
do.
hoping in this year of Alien Romulus and Alien, the new Alien TV series in 2025,
Mm-hmm.
that they just bring the mystery back a bit and they bring the haunting quality back that were there in the early Alien films. And again, it's something explored in the documentary. Um, and it's just, you know, above all, I think is the question raised about, you know, why are you and me even talking now about this
Yeah.
subject? What continues? What is this longevity? Why do we keep going back? Is it Giga? Is it Ripley? Is it the directors? The fact that all the directors were these really strong choices. Is it a mix of all those things? And what is it? And I hope the documentary is part of that ongoing discussion and ongoing love. That's what a great period. Over the next year, you'll get to watch my documentary and hopefully like it. We get to watch Alien Romulus and we get
Mm-hmm.
to watch the Noah Hawley TV series. And I tell you, I am going to be there for all of it. You know, I'm just kind of married to this. So I'm thrilled about what's coming up.
Yeah, no, I do think that's very interesting. And I do feel like the reason we keep going back is because it's a more accessible sci-fi. I feel like there are some sci-fi that do kind of push their fans away in certain reasons. I agree with Ridley Scott coming back with Prometheus and Alien Covenant because I love the first Alien movie and I watched both of those and I just kind of felt like there was no connective tissue to what I loved about Alien and Aliens. And I think what we all love about it is it's this accessibility of these characters. It's the accessibility of the sci-fi. It's not this like big, neuroscience kind of, even though those are great and wonderful when done right, it's this idea, this primal idea of the unknown and reaching out into the unknown and getting bit back.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, when you put your hand too close to the fire and you get burned, I think it's Alien and Aliens are those ideas of, we know that there is so much unknown in space. What if we're putting our hands too close to the fire and we don't realize that we're going to get burned? And like you were saying, the aliens they're the bad guys, yes, but they're not intentional bad guys. They're not bad guys that are like out there just really, they're trying to be the villains. It's organic. It's
Mhm.
their primal instincts. And so it's interesting the primal instincts between us as human beings and them as aliens colliding. I think that's really what grounds it and brings it back. So I'm excited to see all the alien stuff. Bev Alvarez to me has done such a good job with certain films to begin with. Like Don't Breathe is
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. And I always felt like, okay, we need to give him a film where he could really run and do stuff with. And I feel like Alien Romulus is that. The fact that they're doing that in between the 57 year period
Yeah, yeah.
between the first and the second, I think that's brilliant because you're not tarnishing anything that was built up by Alien or Aliens,
Yeah.
you're kind of going, okay, what could have happened in between that? Like, this is not revolutionary, that something probably happened in between there. If somebody else probably stumbled across this, or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
else probably happened. These aliens didn't go 57 years without something like this happening again. So I think that's a very grounded idea. Plus, focusing on the characters, especially the xenomorph and the face hugger, the fact that they showed that in
Yeah.
the teaser trailer. I You can't have the movie without the xenomorphs and the face huggers. Like, even in the capacity, I think that they did show, they tried to kind of explain with Alien Covenant and Prometheus, but it just wasn't the same. I want my xenomorph in my
Yeah.
face, hunting me down. I love the games. I love Aliens, Colonial Marines, and I'm not a big game person, but the reason I love playing that is you are in it with them. You are shooting down the aliens. You are really just going forth and just going at it. And I think that's the feeling you get with the film. So I'm excited. I'm also excited for a TV series. I feel like there's more landscape you can do
Yeah.
with a TV series. So that'll be very interesting. But I feel like we just love that feeling of being scared, of knowing that our fear of the unknown has caught up to us, and the xenomorph is that character. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. I think it's going to be great. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been
No,
fantastic.
pleasure. Pleasure.
If you loved hearing this interview, like I said, I will put the link in the description down below. Aliens Expanded is currently available for pre-order. I would definitely suggest running and snagging a copy. If you listen to this interview and you have not watched Alien or Aliens, please run and do that immediately. We'll link where you can find those on streaming down below as well. Um, in that case, I'm sorry that we may have spoiled bits of the film, but the film has been
You
out for
probably have.
37
Yeah.
years, but it'll be okay. But definitely, and I will link our previous episode of Alien Aliens where we talk about it, where you can kind of get some of our perspective as well. But thank you for so much for coming on, and I greatly appreciate it. So until
Thank
next
you.
time, it's me, Cassandra, for the Horrorcraft Podcast, and I'm saying bye and stay spooky. Bye.